Hi everyone, and welcome back to another session with this Triberg. Unfortunately, it isn't a radio that just needs a bit of clean up and no repairs. Listen to this. Lots of modulation hum. Now, I went round and it actually got, I know I said in the first video the sound is good, and yes, it is pretty good when you're in tune with the station. But when I pressed the phono button, this hum came through and it's got worse. And I was just prodding around and examining the board, and I was tapping away, and I noticed that it was cracking and popping, and I finally worked my way along to this capacitor here, and I can actually make the radio go dead. So obviously there's a dry joint there, or the capacitor's completely duff, but and I don't think that's the cause of this modulation hum, though it could be. I would suggest it's one, two, three, one of those. So I might as well replace all the electrolytics in it, though I am going to solder this one up first and see if that improves anything. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the first video is this set has an exposed fuse on it, which is obviously exposed to your mains voltage, hence the packing tape for my own safety, because it's quite easy. There's no lights on anything at the moment. You know, if the sound's completely down, you might not know it's live. It's quite easy to put your hands either side. Your thumb touches the fuse, Billy Bingo, you're whacked. So that's what that's there for. Quite untidy at the moment, but rather untidy than a bad shock. So what I'm going to do next is stick the soldering iron in the fire and get that warmed up, and then we're going to solder that capacitor back in and see what happens. I suspect not a lot. I should point out as well, just while I remember, that even though the switch is off, your live is still coming through this fuse. So if you get one of these or see anything similar to this, just be very, very careful. It can quite easily kill you. And with that, I'm going to switch it off at the RCD here. Right, I'm going to be back in a minute and get the soldering iron. Right, here's the underside of the board, and I've located the capacitor, and it's actually this leg here, and it's completely dry. You can move the capacitor leg in and out. So I'm going to get my trusty Antex soldering iron and put some more solder on it, and then we'll plug it in and see what happens. Right, and let's turn the volume up. I've still got it switched to phono. It was that capacitor. Look at that. And it. Can't hear much on FM, I wouldn't have thought. No, nothing needs an aerial. But yes, this, I use a loop for looking at boards. I can't afford not an electron microscope, a modern microscope. If I did get one, it would be one of the ones used to put the glass slides on. So I just use this loop here. It's originally for looking at photographs. It's an 8x loop. Very useful for looking at PCBs where you think you've got a dry joint. So, well happy with that. That saves quite a bit of work. I did check those capacitors on my ESR meter, and they did seem to check out alright, though it did say they were in circuit, obviously. So that's a bit of a bonus. So the next thing now is to get the set cleaned up, and we'll check. I don't know if you can see this socket here. In the manual it gives you, there's various test points when you align the radio, and you see a voltage on there, and you trim it and all sorts. It's not too bad to go through, but we'll have a look and see what sort of voltages we get on there. Only thing is, of course, the voltages are probably done in Germany at 220 volts. My voltage is about 240 at all times. Now, the other thing I did is I glued the dial pointer back on, and I fixed the speaker by drilling. Bring that back in. If you remember, one of these, this peg was snapped off, so I cut a small piece of wire, drilled a hole in both sides of the pegs, super glued it, let it dry, and then I've put the rubber bung on, and that seems quite solid now. As I do believe that side never had a rubber washer on for some reason, don't know why. Perhaps they missed it in the factory, not sure. So next bit is clean up. I was going to show you one other thing. If I can get the right angle, you can see there's a larger gap here and this side. I don't know whether the camera is going to, so in effect this screen, the dial plate here is bowed inwards. You can see it. So when you move the dial pointer up and down, it gets to about here, and it starts to make a rubbing noise, which is okay. I don't think I'm going to do anything about that, because if I do, I'll probably have to take it out, heat it up somehow, and that spells disaster if you get the wrong heat, because you might as well write the whole radio off. So I think I'm going to leave it and suffer with it. It's probably, I don't know what's happened to it. You know, it probably needed some sort of tension in here or something, some sort of stop in the front here to stop it going backwards. But yeah, it's bowed inwards a bit. So let's get the radio cleaned up anyway, and I'll stop waffling. Right, let's get started on the cleaning. One needs a toothbrush, a microfiber cloth, a pot of cotton buds, and some foam cleaner, which I've just put down. Oh yeah, down here. And some foam cleaner. We're going to remove the dial face here because I've got another SABA upstairs, a SABA Lindau, and the print is coming off the back of the screen of the dial plate, so I don't want to get this wet in case it does. Right, so what we're going to do is get rid of all this dust, and there's some sort of white powdery residue all around this, as if someone has scraped the, you know, sanded the ceiling down, all the Artex off the ceiling, and left the radio sitting. So first things first, let's get this clean. Of course, what you need to do when you start cleaning is to make sure you got the plug out of sight, sorry, in sight, where you're not going to be tempted to plug the set in, because that clearly wouldn't be good. Oh look, these knobs are silver. This set actually came from Scotland, from Glasgow, so I don't know what it was doing up there. Well, could have come from anywhere, and you'd wonder what it was doing there. But, yeah, this one travelled south about 400 miles. While I'm just letting that show you how bad this scale plate is, actually, you can see it's actually twisted in 2 directions. So whether the heat has got to it, I don't know, but I won't be able to get it in camera, but you can't really see. It is quite twisted. Never mind, not a lot I can do about that. Now, this isn't getting off the years of finger grease. There was some paint there as well. Oh, it is a little bit. All that I can see, it's starting to get more and more silvery on the end. At the moment it's sort of like a tan colour on the end of these knobs. Right. What I'm going to do now is use my cloth and just wipe all this off. You can get these off, actually. These, it shows you in the manual how to get them off, because I'll probably break them if I just tried without reading the instructions. Get that out of the way. So still quite a bit of dust here, but when this dries that'll all come off. Soak that up with the cloth. Looking better already. And down in this groove is pretty shocking, actually. It's one thing I do like about working on old radios is the cleaning up. And I don't know, I didn't make a video on it, but about 2-3 years ago I bought a radio at an auction and brought it home and started to disassemble it. And I'm not sure if I told the story before, but I actually found a whole packet of condoms shoved inside the tuning capacitor. It's an old valve radio, and they'd obviously been there since the 1970s, because I can remember what this particular brand of condom came packed in the 1970s. And yeah, it brought back some memories of more carefree days. Right, so that's got that all cleaned up. Still pretty dusty. There's actually like a embossed pattern on this to mat it down, sort of like little squares all over this, tiny little squares. And of course they're catching all the dust. It's interesting, there's 2 little perspex pegs here which are not part of the dial, surely. No, they might have been at one time, but they're holding, no, they can't have been holding, no, they're not, they're just bits of broken. Ah, I know why. Right, I guess when this was manufactured, sorry this bit, there was two thinner bits of plastic, because you can feel where they were here, and you snap them off and put them, move this forward, in this slot here. Let me just bring the camera down. Just wind the camera down and show you. Right, just there, there's two little bits of plastic shoved through, and I bet they were snapped off the bottom of this. I bet that's how this was moulded, with these little bits, because they don't actually match up. They wouldn't have come like that. That's interesting. You know, they wouldn't have been moulded and kept on the bottom there, because I'm not sure you'd have got them in. No, you wouldn't have. You wouldn't have been able to slot this in. So yeah, it was actually designed like that. Right, going up. Do. Right, so that's the front done. Just blow that dust off when it's completely dry. And what I'm going to do now is get some isopropyl alcohol, and let's get lighting a bit better. I'll try and see if it takes anything off these knobs. Yeah, oh yes. I don't know if you can see the difference. Ready? There we go. That's done it. Much better. So I think what I'm going to do is continue doing this, because obviously everyone's going to sleep now, all yawning, thinking about watching something else, and when it's done I'll film it again. Ta-da! And this will go on for several hours, me cleaning this. Right. Well, I'm just dealing with this cabinet here. These slots here are absolutely, or were absolutely full of dust, pretty much up to the top. And the trouble is getting anything down there, and if you can just see, there's slots on the underside for the speaker, you know, for the air movement. Probably see those in the camera now better than I can. But it's very hard to get things, you know, something wet to clean it down there, because I've still got the speaker attached. I don't really want to remove the speaker and break any more of those plastic lugs. But what I'm using is, I've got a bit of window cleaner and some 600 grade sandpaper, and I'm just gently smoothing the cabinet down, and it's bringing out years of sort of brown muck, which I don't know if you can see. I've just done the side here, it's just drying off. You can see all the dirt's coming off it. Very careful. I've actually put some car wax on the top of this now, yeah, just keep on going with all this dirt in the slots. Quite hard to get rid of, because once you get it wet it just stays there, but sort of you've got to get it wet to get it out. And there's been several spillages. I've cleaned a lot of it out, but yeah, the cabinet's coming up quite nicely now. Right, we're all done. This is the Triberg all cleaned up. I've put some new LEDs in it, and just want to show you the circuit, or the chassis, before I button it all up again. So we'll have a look at that. Right, here's the chassis all cleaned up. Not much to tell really. just cleaned up. All the tuning capacitor pulleys and cams etc. have all been lubricated. The switches have all been cleaned and lubricated. They were a little bit crackly actually, and you can't get in there, but maybe, you know, I've given them a couple of dozen ins and outs each, so hopefully that's cleaned some of the contacts off. Now on the oh yeah, and what else I did is I these coils, two of the coils had come unstuck, I think this one and that one, so I've poured some fresh wax, just remelted some wax, and now they're pretty firm. On the underside of the board there was, if you remember, I replaced there was a dry jointed capacitor leg just there, and there were several other joints that looked rather dry, so about 10 to 20 joints I've put some fresh solder on, heated up the component leg and added some fresh solder to it. But other than that, quite straightforward, and as you saw previously, this capacitor here was the problem. That was the one that was dry jointed. So there's certainly value in the old tap test, whether it's with like a pencil, just, you know, tapping around, or something a little bit heavier like the end of a screwdriver. You know, when the radio's on, as long as you're insulated and don't use like a metal end, because you might short a couple of components out. Yeah. So obviously, I can't remember, yeah, obviously stuck that back down, stuck the speaker where the bushing had come off the back there. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the previous video. I've actually got a small twist drill and drilled a hole out either side of this peg, put a bit of wire in, and then glued it all back together, and then put all the bits and pieces back on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch the lights off. Oh yeah, sorry, and I put a couple of LEDs, so these are quite poorly heat shrunk. I didn't want to get any heat near the LED in case I melted it actually. But I've heat shrunk some LEDs, and they've got like a series resistor. I think I put 560R in there, and they seem to work okay. They're not rectified. I didn't put any sort of rectifier diode in, so yes, they are blinking on and off, but you can't really see it. And so we'll have a look. I'll put it all back together and we'll have a look with the lights off, because it looks quite sweet. Alright, here's the SABA lit up. Obviously the lights are on all the time. Sounds back properly, no sort of hum or anything. This is the Scotland versus Slovenia football match. It's going on about 5 o'clock UK time today. So yeah, very happy with this. Let me switch the big lights on again. The cabinet's come up really well, and it's sort of like a classic piece of mid-1970s European furniture. You know, if you remember, everything was sort of like flat and low and long, and everyone had those G-plan or Schreiber sideboards. Everything very clean and functional looking. This would be quite suitable for a house like that. This would have suited my dad's house in the 1970s actually, because we had a long sideboard and bookcase type thing that went the full length of one wall. Yeah, that would have looked good then. But yeah, it's a very nice radio. Nothing particularly special about it. I wouldn't particularly say it was well made underneath. You know, as usual with a German radio, it's an excellent piece of engineering radio wise. It's just like many European manufacturers at this time suffered with manufacturing defects, and several joints on this one were, you know, dry. This is, what, 40 years old though, so I don't know. But it's going to be a user. Hopefully the missus might even like it, though that might be a little bit doubtful. Yeah, thanks for watching.